over the last hour or so as well. I did want to address one frequently asked question. My sport was lacrosse. So, so just thought I would share. Had a lot of guesses, but that's that. But in all seriousness, this afternoon we're going to talk about addressing student actions on social media to create a healthier school culture. So we'll get a little bit into some more of the serious things that we see, but also how do we help. And I mentioned earlier when we were talking about cyberback, this is where we're going to really lean into that one. So we're going to talk about what we're seeing with cyberbullying and some of these more difficult topics with the students, but also how to help have conversations with them about this. So again, as I skip over my bio slide here, we have 4 different things that we'll do on this agenda here. So we're going to talk about productive ways, modern strategies, best practices, and then resources and takeaways here. So that's where we're headed. But to start, I'll put up some stats that may or may not be surprising. So 34% of 9 to 12-year-olds say that they don't know what to do when they see cyberbullying. So they know what it is. They do see it, they're just not really sure what to do about it. All right, 81% of students would be more likely to intervene in instances of cyberbullying if they could do so anonymously. This really speaks to the fear that a lot of our students have about speaking up in these virtual spaces and feeling like the attention is going to turn on them, right? And so this is a fear that our students have, that cyberbullying isn't just going to stop if they intervene, but that it will actually, again, they'll become the new target of that issue. And 46% of US teens have been bullied online. Okay, so almost half of your students have already experienced this. So when we're thinking about this, we also know that students recognize the double-edged nature of social media, right? They see the positives and the negatives. And so top positive effects, when we're talking to students, the most that you see here, connecting with friends and family. One of my colleagues likes to ask students when she's giving student presentations, she'll ask, if you could only talk to people in person or only talk to them online, what would you choose? And she actually gets a very mixed response from the room. Some people say, I want to talk in person. You get that, one-on-one interaction. You get all the nonverbals, right? All of these different really good feelings that you get from talking in real life to people. But then a good portion of the room will say, well, I would want to have access to talking to people online because everybody that I care about doesn't live within like 2 square miles of me, right? And so when we think about family and friends from all over the place, maybe friends from summer camp that live across the country or family members that move away, this is how our students can keep in touch with them. So this is like one of the top positive things that they see, being able to keep in touch with people that they really care about. We can also see that they can find news and information, same interests, entertainment, self-expression. I'd be curious, you can reflect on this a little bit, but thinking about things you can find on the internet, I asked a group of educators in North Dakota a couple months ago when I was speaking to them about any hobbies that they have that they found from following different social media online. And somebody told me that they were getting really into kayaking because they found an account of somebody that was going on these water adventures, and they have the river right there, and now they're doing all these adventures. I shared yesterday as well, I now am in sewing classes. I am learning how to make quilts because I really like hiking and backpacking, so happy to be up in New Hampshire right now, but I found an account where people were making their own backpacking gear, which I thought was the coolest, and so now I've been taking classes for a few months now, so keep an eye out. Maybe next time I'm here, I'll have my own backpack. But right, so there's a lot of really good uses. At the flip side, again, the negative effects. Students are reporting that most common one that we see here is the bullying and spreading rumors, right? So that's the other side of it. That's what they are most concerned about, is what people are saying online and spreading and how fast that can spread. We can also see that harm to relationships, unrealistic view of others, the distraction and addiction, and the peer pressure. We talk a lot about the peer pressure piece, but it's that bullying that our students are feeling the most stress about. This also comes up in cancel culture, right? So when we are talking to our students, we know that 41% of students are saying that it causes more problems than it solves, and 73% of students are saying that they are talking about this. So this isn't just something that adults in the room talk about. Students are also keyed in to what happens, what frenzies happen around different topics, and how there's this mentality that they have to be on board or say nothing, right? And if something doesn't align with them, they don't always feel like they can speak up about it. So some things that we've seen that students see in their faces and their feeds, this from from the New York Times when a Teen Vogue editor was fired over decade-old tweets that she sent as a 17-year-old. We have another example here. San Francisco renamed 44 schools because of ties to racism and slavery. Seuss Enterprises announced it would stop publishing 6 Dr. Seuss books. All right, and we have these examples here. I won't read them all, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of things in the news. This also happens in our school communities when different things are coming up, and the students don't always feel like they have the opportunity to have dialogue as a part of the conversation as well. So you can see those examples here. We also asked 5th grade students, imagine your friend sends you a link to a YouTube video, you begin watching the video, and someone starts using offensive language that makes you feel uncomfortable. What do? Right? And this, again, just these different things that students can see that can start to feel threatening online. When we asked those 5th graders, 21% said that they would just exit and not reply. 39% said that they would tell the friend that they don't like the videos. 40% said that they would lean on their parents to look at the video and let them know or have them handle it, right? And so again, we talked earlier about how students, they do want adult help. And here you can see that was the most frequently responded answer here from our 5th grade students, going to the adult and seeking help with this. So additional trivia question here. So what % of US teens age 13 to 17 have experienced cyberbullying? Hands up if you think 20%. Hands up if you think 12%. Hands up if you think 46%. All right, hands up if you think 31%. All right, almost everybody said 46, a couple of people said 31. We can see here that, in fact, you are correct. It is 46%. We did talk about that before also, so that's telling me that you're paying attention to the slides. And then additional examples of cyberbullying, right? So spreading lies about someone or posting embarrassing photos without consent. Going back to those social standards we talked about before, right? Protecting your privacy and having conversations about what's being shared, what you share about yourself and where that goes, what people are sharing about you. Another here, sending hurtful, threatening, or abusive messages to someone. We know that, again, sometimes when people get behind that screen, they start saying things that they wouldn't say in real life, right? And there's that real difference. And so we can challenge our students to think about, would you, when you're typing, no matter where and to who, would you also, if you took that screen away, say the same thing to that person? Would you change anything? Now, if you put that back in writing, are you going to do anything to help that tone, right? How do we really make sure that we are, again, in alignment with our core values and pausing before we send things like this and thinking about that when we receive them? And then impersonating someone via fake accounts. So one of my colleagues is a cheer coach, and some of her cheer athletes said that they were being bullied by this fake account from the school, and she put her detective hat on and started going through and trying to find these middle school accounts and figure out what student was saying these things, but it was all coming from these fake accounts without, when it was really hard to identify. So again, the other thing to think about, sometimes a while back when I was coaching, students talked about having their Instagram account and then their Finsta. So Finsta is that fake Insta. And so some students were using this only with their really close group of friends to post what they really thought and their actual moments throughout the day. Started as a nice idea of we only show the really positive things that are happening in our lives on social media. How do we do more real things? But it quickly sort of turns for some people into an outlet for some of the not as good thoughts that they're having that really need to not be put online. So here are some examples of cyberbullying that are in the news. We can see there was a teen that was detained over school threats after a classmate impersonated her on Instagram. So again, some students will make accounts of other people and pretend to be other people and then go and interact in that way. And so this had very, very real consequences for the student that was impersonated until they figured that out. Teenager forced to move schools after being bullied on TikTok. Again, once some of these things are sort of have that momentum, we talked earlier about that absenteeism and wanting to re-enter a space, and that can be really challenging, especially when you don't know who has seen what, but it's out there. And then that third piece, Meta cracking down on revenge porn targeting teenagers. So again, students understanding that what they're putting out there can be shared, can be screenshotted, and how important it is to be careful what we're sharing and sending. And so we have a quote here. Sometimes it could be really anonymous and people can say stuff about you or other people and you don't know who it is, right? And this was from a teen boy. And that's where it starts to feel even scarier for our students because they don't even know where this is coming from, right? They don't know who's saying what. They don't know when it's being put there, but they know that these things are coming at them from these different accounts. So some things to look out for. before we get into how to talk to our students, but we want to make sure that we can start to recognize some of the signs that our students are experiencing this. So things that you'd want to keep a lookout for would be if you're noticing a student uneasy or nervous about going to school or socializing, right? When students start withdrawing in that way, that's usually a sign that there's something serious going on. We want to start asking some questions there. Another piece here, being secretive about online accounts and social media activity. Again, we talked last night with the families about having, just like we talked about having school standards, we talked to the families about having family standards, right? And thinking about how we're onboarding students and children to different devices and apps and the age-appropriate nature of different ads to that. And so part of this is making sure when we talk about that full community approach that our families know that they can look at privacy settings. They can set restrictions. They can also have standards within their family where they're vetting who your friends are, right? And taking a look at that with you and having that open dialogue. And so if we see that students have maybe a little bit more oversight, but then they start being more secretive, something might be going on. A loss of interest in hobbies, abnormally withdrawing from friends and family, appearing angry or depressed, right? These are a lot of the signs that you're looking for anyway with students to see that there's different problems going on, but then we can add this social media behavior to that as well. And this might clue you in that there's something going on with cyberbullying. So that's the scary stuff, right? We know our students are experiencing that. So what we want to do is think about some best practices here and how we are addressing this. And so I know we talked earlier, and I again, in the parent presentation, we talk a lot about how repetition is the mother of learning. And so you see a lot of similar things here, but this really is the core of our work. And we're thinking here specifically about that cyber back, right? And we want to think about how we can encourage our students to speak up, have these conversations, whether it be alert adults, say something in a group message before it starts to get out of hand, right? Whatever that looks like. One other thing I would add here too, as we think about that family piece and the importance of bringing the community together. I was having a conversation a few weeks ago with a principal that told me that for their sports teams, sometimes their parents of the captains will get in a group text with the captains. And some of those group chats with the students and families started to get into things about the coach, things about other students, playing time, and now you have these adults and the students all cyberbullying other students and adults together. And I'm sure if you were to talk to those adults, they would be horrified once they realize what they'd done, right? But these things can sort of have a way of spiraling out of control. So when we're thinking about cyberbacking, what we're going to think about here in a moment is how are we really encouraging students to speak up, and that extra hard task if it's somebody older than you, right? An older student, but also an adult who is supposed to be that model of behavior, and that can be a really hard conversation to have. So what we're going to do here, I want to just take a quick moment before we get into even more ways to handle this. If you can get with the people, again, we'll just have a quick conversation, and then we're going to take a little bit of a different activity approach. But have you been seeing cyberbullying with your students? If so, what have you been seeing? How has that looked? What has come up? And what have you wished that you had access to help handle that? So I'll give you a couple minutes. You can address one or all of those parts of that question, but just to get together to talk about sort of where we are with this. Go ahead. All right, take about 30 seconds, and then we'll come back. 30 seconds. All right, we'll bring those conversations back to a close. All right, so you know the drill by now. I would love a couple people, one or two groups to share just, what have you been seeing with your students, or any of the things that came up when you were talking? Yeah, so the question is, or the statement and then question, right? We hear rumblings from students. We hear some things. We don't have the hard data. We don't have the text in front of us, right? We don't have the different pieces. Where's the line when you do get involved, right? And I think this is a question that we get all the time, and the answer is a little bit case by case, right? But when things start to impact the learning environment, when things start to impact the school day, that's when you have to start thinking about how are we going to intervene, and then escalate that up to the counseling staff, the admin team, right? Especially when it's more feelings than it is facts, right? That's sort of that murky space that we're in. A lot of what we hear from schools also is when things are happening, often it's not on school grounds, right? It's happening over the weekend. Where are the families, and why is this coming to my desk, right? Like that's a question that I think we get quite a bit. There's actually a book called Accountable that I read recently that really talked a lot about this, about a school in California and the students, again, a fake Instagram account, but it started to have really terrible things on there. It was happening outside of school, started to impact the school day, and then how the admin had to try to figure out where that line is. And I think, again, when it starts to impact the school day, that's where things have to start getting escalated. The other piece to this is we want to be able to recognize what's happening so that we can try to intervene. But really, our approach is to, in addition to recognize this, and we'll talk about this in a moment here too with more strategies, but how do we get in front of it now, right? So how do we give the students the tools so that instead of it being rumblings and the students don't know how to address it, because that's really the key, how do we help to empower them to know how to stick up for themselves? How do they know when to report up and when things are to that severity? So hopefully that helps a little bit, but I think that's a question that a lot of educators will continue to grapple with, even leaving the room today as well. Yeah. Any other topics come up or questions, comments? Yes, please. Yep.
We could, as an educator and a person that's supposed to be influencing these kids in a good way, we can talk about, well, what kind of character are you giving off right now? Like,
Right.
Are you showing, character that God would appreciate, or are you building that person up? Are you thinking before you speak about that person?
Yeah.
Should you be talking about that person?
Yeah.
They're not here to defend themselves. Like if we hear something like that.
Yeah. So that's a great point too, and being able to step in and again bringing the values and standards and expectations of your schools into those conversations. If you're hearing these walk-bys in the hallway, absolutely, that's an excellent point. Well, what I want to do here actually is I'm going to switch screens around here as smoothly as possible, but I'm going to actually show you one of our lessons so that you can see some possible questions and ways to talk to students about this, and you can take these ideas and please take pictures as we go. I'm going to ask you to join in too to see what that looks like as well. But this is going to be one strategy that you can use to set up conversation with your classroom. Then I'll share some additional tips and tricks, but just give me a moment here while I figure out how to get this to do what I would like it to do. What I'm going to do is ask you something that you're often not going to ask your students, but please take out your phones. And you are going to go to winatsocial.com/join. I'll say it a few times. So winatsocial.com/join. Okay, we see this now. winatsocial.com/join. And then when you're there, you're going to put in this code. So you can see that at the front of the room now. And you can also see the website there as well, 251918. And once you do that, you get to pick your very own icon. And then you're going to pick how you're feeling. And then we're going to start to see some fun things popping up at the front of the room. Anybody having any trouble? Yes. Did I see a hand over here for trouble? Are you can't connect? The internet? I'm asking the internet to do too much at once? Yeah. Okay. All right. I can tell that winter is coming in New Hampshire right now. Yep. And some people hanging on to that sunshine. Okay, so as you continue to join, just for time's sake here, I can see we still have numbers ticking up, but we're going to launch in and see some different ways and strategies that we could talk to some students about this. So we're going to talk about handling online hate and hurtful messages by controlling the controllable. This is an example of a cyberback lesson that we might do with 7th graders.
Hurtful group chats, mean comments while gaming, an account trash-talking classmates. If you've been through this, you're not alone. Many students say reporting online hate to the platform feels pointless since you never know what happens next. It feels like you have no control. But what if there were things you could control? You can control how you respond, who you go to for advice, and how you set a positive example for others. Let's explore all the ways we can take control over online hate.
So right from the get-go here, one thing that I just want to point out is that often when we're talking to families, there's a lot of ask for the companies to do better, right? And I think that's totally fair. But sometimes that feels like a big ship that takes a long time to move, right? And so what we want to think about here is how do we help hone in on the controllables with our students, with ourselves, and with the families so that we can start to take actions in our own school culture while we hope that the larger companies do continue to make good choices for our students. Some stories here that inspired this lesson, right? 80% of students say cyberbullying in video games is a problem. If you've ever overheard students playing video games or seen any of the chats, it gets very brutal very quickly. So often what I'll encourage is that people turn off chat or don't get mic'd up if they're going to play one of those big open games. Students across the world weigh in on what bullying is like today and so on. And we're going to jump in here. So on your devices, you will see in a moment a question about how often students report seeing cyberbullying. All right, so again, we have our definition here of cyberbullying, and with screens everywhere, sometimes people say things without thinking about how it might hurt someone's feelings. What percentage of students aged 13 to 17 say cyberbullying is a major problem for people their age? So this is a little bit of a different question than what we asked before. So take your best guess. We're gonna test this internet here and see. It looks like we almost have everybody. All right, we have most of the responses here. I'm going to go ahead and hit next just in case the internet is slow for a couple devices here. and we'll see how our room responded. All right, so 49% of you were correct that it was 53%. So 53% ages 13 to 17 say cyberbullying is a major problem for people their age. We've been talking about these different questions all day, and I don't want to rob anyone the opportunity of displaying that they are right, so hands up if you got this right. Very nice, very nice, good. All right, but we can also see what students around the world think about this, and they're pretty much in alignment with what you thought here, that it is, in fact, that 53%. I'll go ahead and hit next. We're going to hear, this is an example of a video you might show your students of, again, people who they're seeing in their feeds, right, and how they're talking about this, online hate. So I'll let this play here.
I am Charlie D'Amelio. I do TikTok dances. I'm Dixie D'Amelio. I also do TikTok. I would describe Dixie as quite a goofball. She's a good person to have fun with. She can get bossy because she's my older sister. I think Charlie is a hardworking person. She never quit making videos, even with every hate comment she was getting. Some of the most hurtful comments that I read about myself online are, she's fatter than when we got her famous, or she's ugly, they don't like the way my face looks for some reason. A lot about my body shape, my body type, which hits close to home because I struggled a lot with body image, body dysmorphia, bad eating habits. No one really knows that. I'm still a 15-year-old teenager, girl especially. It hurts for everyone, no matter who you are. Getting hundreds of thousands of hate comments per week is a lot to handle. She doesn't get as many as I do. Yeah, not as many, but I've gotten, I posted a picture at the beach one time and everyone was just talking about my weight. Everyone was like, I can see her ribs, that's disgusting, eat a burger and all this. And I've also struggled trying to gain weight for a very long time. No matter what, they're gonna find something wrong. This isn't the first time that I've had to deal with something like this. Kids in my elementary school being mean to me online. Sophomore year was very hard. I would go to therapy every week and I wouldn't talk. It has gotten that bad to the point where I felt like I can't go on. As a teenager, it can be hard coming to your parents with everything because you always get nervous that they're gonna judge you, or you don't want to tell them just because you're stubborn and you're a teenager. But throughout the years, I've realized that holding it in causes a lot more damage than being able to tell someone you trust, whether that's family or a guidance counselor, whoever that may be. My family's my support system. I know that they all have my back no matter what. If I could give a couple tips for people struggling with bullying, pick up something new. I know my outlet was dance. It helped me get out all of the anger and sadness. Another thing is just respect yourself and know your body is your choice and your decision. Just be smart with where you're sharing things or who you're sharing things with, because you can't really trust anyone. If someone is hating a lot, maybe see if they're okay. Maybe the person who is letting out the most hate is the one who is hurting the most. You never know what someone's going through, and everyone's beautiful in their own way and unique, and that's what makes everyone so special. The more positivity and empathy you put out there and the more smiles, it does nothing but good. So I'd say the more of that, the better.
So that's an example of a video that you might share with your students. Again, taking people that they are seeing in their feeds, right? These are very prominent TikTok stars for our students, and then they can see what's happening and how they're responding to it, and that it's how it feels too. And I think it's hard to watch that video and not feel something for those two social media influencers. They're not just people behind a screen, right? And so they can start to see some of that impact. And then you could take a picture of this if you'd like. This is a good question that you might ask, right? So these TikTok stars are just two of many people who found a healthy way to deal with cyberbullying and online drama. What are some things that they said that you can control when you're being bullied, right? So their strategies. So taking those real life examples and then having students think about what they could do if they start experiencing bullying, right? And what they're seeing touch them with this online content. Another question you might ask is just like at the end, that empathy building question, right? When people are being mean, when they are, do you think that they feel happy, strong, capable, and appreciated? And are those people that feel that way likely to hate on other people? Why or why not, right? So again, building up that empathy and understanding so that they can have a little bit of that as they're navigating this and dealing with it as well. So again, humanizing this entire piece. Another question you might ask, and you'll all have the opportunity here in a moment, we're going to talk about the consequences of bullying both online and offline. So standing up for others being bullied is the most common way of shutting down negativity, and that could be done by offering support, speaking up, or simply refusing to join in the hate. What do you think is the most motivating reason to stand up for someone? And you can answer this the way that you think a 7th grader might, but you could also answer this with your own, the way that you feel as well. So I'll give everybody a moment to take a look at this question and give your response. Again, it looks like we have almost all the responses, so I'm going to go ahead and hit next here. All right, in this room, we are pretty much on the same page that we can make a positive difference in someone's life. And so this can be really interesting to ask questions with your students. You could do a heads down, hands up type of response too, so you really get that anonymous feedback and get how your students really feel about this and know what motivates them, right? So what we're seeing here is we're building empathy for what's happening to other people and where they're coming from. We're also thinking about like what's our motivation for sticking up for someone else, right? How do we help to do this? And then as we move through here, I'm not going to play through this just for time's sake, but this is an example of bringing in an older student to have a conversation. I also wanted to share that as you're thinking about this content, right, with your schools, if you have some older students that are really doing this well, a really powerful tool can be to have those students come and visit the younger classrooms, right? Again, that peer influence is so critical to how our students are learning. That's a part of the whole thing with social media, right, is seeing what everybody else is doing. If you're having these conversations with some of your older grades and you have those older students go visit a 3rd grade classroom or a 4th grade classroom and obviously bring the tone down to that appropriate age level, but those students really remember and are impacted by the work that the older students will do with them. So a lot of schools report that having that older student mentorship can be really impactful. We're going to do one more quick question here, and then we will go back to some more tips and tricks. So we'll do a quick rank here. What advice do you have for navigating cyberbullying positively? All right, so we all know it can help to reach out to someone we trust when serious bullying happens. Let's anonymously share who we'd actually go to. So again, of course, you can think about how your 7th graders would respond to this and where they would go. And you don't have to answer this one if you don't want to, as we're really thinking about that from that student perspective. But this is where you can ask questions to see like where's their go-to now. And again, if you do that heads down, hands up so they can get that anonymous feedback, they can start to see that a lot of people are going to go to very similar places, or there might be somebody that they weren't thinking about that would actually be a really good resource. So as people are, a few of you are making this response, I'll just go ahead and show you what this might look like if your students were responding to a question like this. And then if we look at that world data, we actually see that the number one is that students will go to a trusted adult in their family. The second choice is typically a counselor, third is a teacher, and then fourth would be an anti-bullying helpline. So students, again, they want help and they're going to people that they know. And so again, keeping that full community perspective, the question of where's the line, when do we need to intervene, if we can keep families in the loop on this, the students often want to go to their families anyway, right? And so you can help equip them to have these conversations. So just some examples of different questions you can ask, how you can bring this dialogue into the classroom without doing the really scary work that we did at the beginning of this presentation of how bad cyberbullying can be, but still opening up that conversation. So I'm going to bring my slides back up and see if I do this the right way here. Okay. So now we're going to talk about some tips. So additional things that we're going to take away here. We talked about this a little bit, but the first tip here is going to be to flex your empathy, right? So putting yourself in someone else's shoes and also thinking about how gossip, rumors, bullying would make them feel, right? So even if a student is not participating in that themselves, but they're watching it, we want to also, again, create the empathy for that side of it as well. And so this is a really quick clip from an interview with a member from ESPNW.
Know about social media, but is hard to actually experience is the difference between the written word and what it feels like to read it versus looking someone in the face as they say it, even if that's not the person who wrote it.
So again, it's a very quick clip, but thinking about that difference and having our students really think about what does it feel like to read something written to you behind a screen, and what does it feel like to have something said to you face to face? And then on the flip side, what does it feel like to type something? Very easy to type, right? How easy is it to say that same thing to someone face to face? And really thinking about having exercises where we're flexing that empathy and putting ourselves in a position to have that conversation. All right, tip number 2 here. This is to encourage and celebrate the positive moves your friends make online and off every day. So again, we know at the beginning from the stats that students are often afraid to speak up because they don't want the bullying to turn on them. If we can encourage our students when they see good things happening, when they do have that quick stop and pause in the hallway and align our values back to where we want to be, right? Can we, as a bystander, maybe you're not the one that said the good thing, but can you go and encourage and step up and be that first follower to the person that did intervene, right? And so instead of sitting back and waiting to see if they start to get bullied, can you step up and be more of a united front, right? And so encouraging our students to have those conversations. Another quick video here of the kindness campaign and how students took this to the next level.
A short message.
We are your kindness ambassadors.
What started with 3 schools in Carlsbad has spread across the world into the Great Kindness Challenge.
Kindness means that you be good to other friends. It means to be very nice and be so sweet.
This is an initiative across the country. 15 million other students from 25,000 other schools across the country. And even outside of the United States, people are taking part in this. It's pretty neat.
While the students have their own checklist of acts of kindness at school and at home, they can create their own good deeds.
A smile to a stranger or a simple thank you. Small tasks that we sometimes forget can make a huge impact on someone's day.
Busca enseñarle a los niños que no es difícil ni tampoco caro ser amable con otras personas.
The goal is to help transform the way these kids view and treat others. Students will be spreading compassion and helping others in the classroom and at home.
Everyone's being nicer to each other, respectful.
We may smile at 25 people. Everyone that hug me is just sad.
So I went down to the nurse and I told her that she has helped me through my ups and downs.
I made a thank you note for the custodial staff for helping keep our school very clean.
Kindness can bloom and it can grow and it can be contagious.
Teachers, Vista firefighters, sheriff deputies, and even city leaders showed up and created a tunnel of kindness for kids to walk through.
Get in there, guys!
My goal is to smile at 25 people the rest of the day.
These students have been involved in global service projects.
Our students have raised over $4,000.
We're reading to kindergartens because we like being kind.
We're making yellow cards.
With the kindness challenge, it's just helping people realize that they mean something to all these people.
Well, tomorrow marks the last day of the week-long Great Kindness Challenge. I have an idea they're not going to end it, though, after tomorrow.
School officials say this is a lesson that will be reinforced the rest of the school year. Kindness isn't just about this week. We want it to last.
Student Emily Walters holds on to the message she received, even though the challenge has officially ended.
Be the best you can be every day.
Just one of the many acts of kindness. united as a world to spread kindness because...
So my favorite is also the student that smiled at 25 people. I would love to see how that tally happened and what that looked like. But again, the kindness challenge is a really great way to get your students involved in, again, being on the other side, right? And how does it feel to spread good? And then one more tip here, tip number 3. This can be really helpful for your students as real actionable steps to take. And so I would encourage you to take a picture of this one for sure. Tip number 3, you can talk to your students about stop, screenshot, block, and talk, right? So if you're being cyberbullied or if you notice people being cyberbullied, you can stop the conversation, right? You can try to intervene and redirect. You can take a screenshot so that you have evidence that this is happening, especially if it's happening to you, so that you can then bring that to who you need to bring it to. Block, right? We don't have to just, our students rather, we also, but don't have to just take what's coming at us, right? You can block people, you can stop that from coming your direction. It's okay to do that, right? You don't have to just be open to whatever anybody wants to say, and then talk, right? We want to make sure that we're talking about it with a trusted adult, with somebody that can help us and to intervene there. So that's tip number 3. And then a few additional resources and takeaways here. Again, we've seen some of those good examples. These are the examples that we've seen in the news. So millions of students with the Great Kindness campaign, I Am Perfect the Way I Am, from Selena Gomez on cyberbullies leaving unkind comments, and then students creating the I Can Help campaign and an organization working to reduce negativity online to support mental health. I know we've also spent some time today talking about, like, well, how do we scale this content, right? Because some of us are teaching younger students. It doesn't feel like they're experiencing all of this, but we do want to help them to get on board before they are handed these devices and phones and start experiencing these things and have to navigate them. So this is our recommendation of types of topics that you might dig into with students. So in 3rd grade with Cyberback, you might be just talking about how do you play as a team online and off, right? How do you collaborate well with others? If any of you have coached little kids, or if you've been on team sports yourself, you know conflict can happen pretty quick. I'm thinking about youth soccer and bunching around the ball and who should be where, right? All these little conflicts can arise, but that's a really good opportunity to start teaching them those good teamwork values and also how to speak up and have disagreement. In 5th grade, right, we're thinking about diffusing gossip and rumors. We have here using celebrities' latest strategies, again, trying to depersonalize and use other examples so that students can have that conversation safely about things that they're seeing. In middle school, we might be thinking about what we just did, right, handling online hate from TikTok stars, 8th grade, using student voice to strengthen school culture and inclusivity. So again, as your students age, now we're encouraging them to use their own voice, right? To mentor the younger students, to speak up, to take action. And then in high school, as our students age, right, we're respecting boundaries, we're getting thoughts on cancel culture, we're thinking about constructive feedback and how that's different from criticism, right? So all of these different pieces that can all fall under that umbrella of teaching really good life skills and alerting them to good behavior and what behavior might not be appropriate. Yes? Yes, it's not a dumb question. Yeah, so cancel culture, that's when, often it happens on the internet, but a group will take a topic, and so for the Teen Vogue example, right? So that editor, she had shared inappropriate photos when she was 17. She was in her late 20s when this surfaced. When someone found it, it ended up making its way to the New York Times. The New York Times did an article. It gained a lot of momentum. There became a huge call for her to resign, and she did end up resigning, right? And so with cancel culture, instead of having dialogue about, and this is a topic that can be debated, right? And I don't recall specifically what the pictures were, so I also, just let me say that. But what you want to think about is, are things taking on a life of their own? Do people have the opportunity to talk about what they've done? Do people have the opportunity to have made a mistake and to grow from that? Or is it just that if something surfaces, it's been found out and it's over, right? And so with cancel culture with our students, what that can mean is that if something happens, they feel like they have to either get on a bandwagon or say nothing, right? And so what we want to do is encourage students to be able to have conversations. They don't always have to agree, right? And I think that's larger dialogue. They don't have to agree on everything with everyone all the time, but how do we help them to have polite disagreement and to step in and step up if they see that somebody is being shoved out of the community that maybe needs some help to just grow and move forward? Is that helpful? Yeah. Any other questions? All right, a couple more resources here. I won't move this yet. I'm just seeing another camera come up. Okay, all right. I shared this out with the families last night. I would encourage you to grab this one too. This is a Cyberback challenge where you can actually huddle with your students to go through and look at a mean text and then how you might respond to try to get this conversation back on track, right? So in this example here, and it might be a little small to read, but the person on the left is saying, I heard she got a 40 on the math test, but it was so easy. She must be pretty dumb, right? And so that's a text that a student might get, right? And so then there's an open bubble on the other side, and in this example, the response is, she's pretty smart though. Did you see her science project? She had the highest score in the class, right? So you don't necessarily, the students don't always have to say, that's wrong because, right? Because that can feel really challenging to do and to have to confront people all the time. But what they can do is redirect and show what is appropriate in that conversation, right? And so it's helping students to walk that line of how they're managing it. Now, of course, if a student comes up to you and says a classmate is dumb, you're probably going to say that that's just not nice. They shouldn't say that. But helping the students to have those age-appropriate conversations with each other and to navigate that. Other things that you can think about here, this can be a really good launching point for some of the other topics that we've talked about. So, how are students thinking about what they're putting in writing? Remembering that they need to protect their privacy and others' privacy, remembering things can be a screenshot and shared, right? And so not only is it just the right thing to do, but also be careful because things can be shared, and what you think is a private conversation many times is not in fact a private conversation. So that's one that I would definitely grab. We already put this up, so let me come here at the huddle. So if you didn't grab this one before, this is again that newsletter that I would encourage you to take a look at. That'll have more resources there as well. If you did not fill out the survey before, I will put that back up one more time to provide some feedback on the day. I would definitely appreciate that. So I'll leave this up. And then I do have some discussion questions again for you for your breakouts, but I have a hand in the back. Yes? Yeah, so the question about students and educators connecting on social media. So from my days as coaching, that question, my initial thought is like, that feels very dangerous, especially if your social media account is your personal account, right? And thinking about how we're interacting with students, I think that there's a lot of implications there for how we're communicating. Are there people also a part of these conversations with us? I've heard from a lot of different other conferences that I've been to where people find that some of their newer teachers will create accounts and become Facebook friends, or again, because students aren't on Facebook anymore, but Instagram friends and followers. And they've really seen some ethical issues come up with that blurred line. Now, that said, there are some apps where educators have very specific accounts for their teaching, and then students will connect there. And so we've seen that happen sometimes with some TikTok accounts and some Instagram accounts, and you've probably, if you are on social media, you've probably, maybe you try not to look at education when you're in your downtime, but many of you probably have seen some of the teachers and instructors that do content on there as well. So I think it really depends on like what's the point. I think it also depends on what your school standards are, but in general, I think when we're thinking about helping our students with their boundary setting, that can be just a consideration as far as that goes. Is that helpful? Yeah. I'll put up the final questions here for your breakout, but I'm happy to stand here for a couple more questions. If there's any final questions on anything we talked about today or otherwise, yeah. Yeah, I can share that activity. If I will have some business cards up here in the corner in a moment, take my email, I'll email you. Yes. Yeah, so yes. Yeah, and how they're using different apps. Yeah, so on that, if you downloaded that Student Insights report from earlier, and I can find that and put it back up here in a minute too, but that'll have a lot more information on that divide and breaking down by gender. Absolutely, yeah. Just looking through the crowd for any more hands. All right, I'll be around, so feel free to come chat with me as well, but otherwise, thank you very much, and there's the questions.
Great.